Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville and Knox County government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that grabs our attention. I am Scott Barker, the editor of Compass, and Compass is a subscription-based website and newsletter where we report on all these things and more, and you can find us at CompassKnox.com. I'm joined, as always, by Compass co-founder Jesse Mayshark, who also is the brains and the voice behind Headlights, which is a podcast of the Progressive South. Jesse, welcome, and how you doing?
I'm doing fine. You know, I had an interesting realization this week. Knox County schools opened this past week. Mm-hmm. If you don't have kids in school, you might not know that. And interestingly, I don't have kids in school. This is the first autumn since 2009 that I don't have a child in K-12 schools. My youngest graduated from LNN in June. And, of course, I was aware of that. But then when the new school year started, it just really struck me. I was like, no back to school photos, no, trying to figure out the bus schedule. None of that. I'm actually having to go and unsubscribe from all of these different parent communication platforms and things that Knox County uses to push information out because I'm not involved in that anymore. And so, yeah, just another one of those little signposts that you're getting older.
Well, but really, if you forget, now KPD's put in speeding cameras in the school zones. So that's one way that you might find out that school is going on if you were going 25 in a school zone, which is the speed limit's 20. So there you go.
Watch yourselves for sure.
Absolutely. And we're recording this in the opulent studios of Barbarian Productions, where Lord Seth Barber, a notorious lead-footed driver in school zones. Oh, he's not disagreeing. Okay, great. This is his realm. So, Seth, how you doing? And what's our 3-day-old weather report?
Spotted showers again. Another week of just random deluges on and off throughout the week.
So damp, even when it's not raining.
Yes.
It's so humid.
Hard to mow the lawn damp. The lawn's never quite dry enough to mow, but you got to power through it anyway.
Yeah.
And then my kid broke the string on my super expensive lawnmower. I guess we'll assume it's a super expensive lawnmower. Broke the string trying to pull it started because there was some clumping action in there, and he didn't quite understand that part. So I had to go through the process of repairing my lawnmower this week. So I don't know. Don't judge me when you drive by my house right now because it's a little bit of a wreck in the yard. Blame it on the weather. I'm just saying.
I don't judge anybody about their yard, so don't worry about that. Last week was had a couple of surprises that came our way. But the first thing we're going to do is take a last look back at the August 6th election, kind of a wrap up on that before moving on to the state and federal general election in November. Also, there are big changes contemplated for the Knoxville Municipal Golf Course. We'll talk about that some. There's a new state law that officials just recently found out could have a profound impact on development, specifically subdivision development in unincorporated Knox County. Actually, could be anywhere in Knoxville or Knox County. But we'll start out with a time-worn topic here: the Kerbela Temple apartment complex proposal, which has come before Planning Commission now 4 times, and each time the 3 the first 3 times it came by, came to the Planning Commission. They sent it back for more revisions. So it came back last Thursday. And this was a wild one. This was a little crazy. And we won't go into all this. We've talked about this many times. This is a 217 unit apartment building where the Kerbela Shriner's Temple is on the hill overlooking the south terminus of the Gay Street Bridge. It's in the south waterfront area, so there is the south waterfront form-based code that they have to follow in developments in the south waterfront. This property is on as we said, is on a hill. It's irregular. It's steep slopes. You can't really put a development on it that complies with the south waterfront code. So there is an alternative approval process where you can go in and you basically say, well, we can't meet these things, but we can do these things that comply with the spirit of the
that make a gesture toward
well,
the form-based code.
Yeah, and so then it gets then Planning Commission looks at whether it meets the spirit of the code. The developer is CR Endeavors. They're out of Birmingham, Alabama, and they brought it in, and it's gone through several iterations since they first proposed it. And there are 7. By the way, there's 7 areas of the code that they cannot meet, or basically can't meet. Some of they truly can't. You can't put where this is. It's the hill. I say hill. It's a bluff up from Sevier Avenue to the buildable part of the property, and it's impossible to put a building facade on the street level.
Right.
It's just you can't do it.
The street level is a hill.
Yeah, unless you just go in and blast the entire hill down, you can't do it. So anyway, and those 7 items become important here in a minute. But but they've also there's a group that's goes by the acronym SWAG. It's the South Waterfront Advisory and Advocacy Group. They're local stakeholders. They're very passionate about the South Knox Waterfront Code. They met with them several times. SWAG never came around to supporting the development. The CR Endeavors did make changes based on some of that. One of which is the one that has a central role in all this, and is the SWAG insisted on a publicly accessible walkway through the middle of this development from the south end to the north end, which would bisect the building there, and the developer decided to go ahead and do that. But they also, when it came up to the building, instead of dividing the building in 2 and having an outdoor walkway between the 2 sections of the building, they were going to put a tunnel underneath. They call it a breezeway. SWAG calls it a tunnel underneath the lobby portion of the building. SWAG adamantly opposed to that because they think tunnels are unappealing. But anyway, has been a big sticking point. They had the meeting on Thursday. One kind of interesting thing that the Ben Mullins, the attorney for the developer, kind of fired a shot across their bow. Noting that they couldn't make putting in this walkway a requirement because that would be an illegal taking under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. Cited some case laws and said, I'm not, in fact, he used the term, I'm not rattling sabers here. I'm just letting you know. That'd be an issue. But we're voluntarily going to be doing what we say we want to do. That didn't go over well with some of the planning commissioners, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of the discussion did hinge on the relative merits of that, but also they talked about the seven. I almost want to call it the seven deadly sins, the seven violations of the, or not really violent, but nonconformities of the code, and this is like, it's the lot size was too big, and the building's footprint was too big, and there were various other setbacks were set back further than what the code allows. Things like that are primarily due to the topography. And the Planning Commission chair, John Huber, in his framing this, said these seven nonconformities, these are the ones we're really going to base our decision on. These are the things we need to talk about. That's important. In just a minute, he goes on and does that. They talk, they keep going. After almost 2 hours, and this was interesting. A planning commissioner, Lou Browning III, kind of released some frustration. He was sitting there going, I don't like the South Waterfront Code. I don't like anything about this. I don't like the code. I don't like the vision plan behind it. I don't like any of that. So I'm going to vote to approve this.
Which, of course, planning commissioners can say whatever they want, but that's not what they're there to do. That code was adopted by city council, and planning commission is legally charged to apply the codes as developed by the city and the county. They can opine, but that's not.
Yeah, well, a couple of the other commissioners who were opposed to this noted that. But yeah, I mean, they can have all the opinions they want of what the code is, but they still need to do it to apply the code. But so he moved to approve it. Eventually, there was a little bit more discussion. They voted, and the vote was 6 in favor and 7 against. So it failed. And I almost started packing up to leave the meeting right then, because this was toward the end of the meeting. But a brand spanking new planning commissioner, who was just appointed by Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs and confirmed by the Planning Commission, or the Knox County Commission, Walla Habibi, who I was not familiar with before this, but Habibi then came in and said, "Can I make another motion?" They said, "Yeah," and he said that he wanted to vote to approve this, which, as a member of the winning party, he can do, voted to approve this with the requirement that they put it with the inclusion of the walkway and tunnel, and it was pointed out to him that it's in there. It's in their plan. So we just voted it down because it's in their plan. he was under the impression from the discussion, I mean, he didn't say it directly, but from the discussion, it was obvious that he thought they were only supposed to consider the nonconformities that Huber had mentioned earlier, and that he didn't realize that the walkway and there's some other aspects that had changed that were in there as well. One was a pedestrian plaza at the corner of Sevier Avenue and Dawson Street, which is the side street there. But he didn't realize that was in there already. And after some confusion, some talk and trying to sort out what was going on, eventually, Planning Commissioner Tim Hill said, well, what they could do, and they were backed up by their attorney, Tasha Blakely said, you can change it somewhat. You can add something fairly innocuous to the motion and vote on it again. He added Hill added a provision to make sure that the walkway was open from dawn until dusk. So put that provision in there that if they end up building this, it will have to be open dawn until dusk. And then they voted again, and Habibi, lo and behold, voted for it. So it passed 7-6. So I've never seen a meeting in which something was voted down and then voted up in the very same meeting within just a few minutes of each other. It was very strange.
I have seen that back in the old days of Knox County Commission, where they would every once in a while vote something down, call a recess, go huddle in the hallway, and come back and vote it up. Like,
oh, those were the days when they violated the Sunshine Law.
Not so much
brazenly.
Recently. Yeah.
I guess the last time I remember seeing anything similar to that was on Black Wednesday,
right?
When all that came to a head, and their relatively open violation of the Open Meetings Act got them into severe legal problems. But anyway,
I'm guessing the swag people had a sort of whiplash of a brief burst of euphoria followed by sinking feeling of doom.
The swag, yes, swag, euphoria, then doom. See, our endeavors, it was doom, then euphoria. So, they were their chief operating officer, Ryan Robertson, was there. He slipped out before I could get him, but I didn't see him. My back was to him when they actually voted, but I imagine that he was the last time when they sent it back for revisions. The last time he was visibly angry, that they didn't go ahead and vote for it. So I could imagine that he was probably none too pleased that it got voted down. But then they turned around and voted for it. I did talk to the swag folks right after the vote, just a few minutes after the vote. They have the option of appealing. Typically, this is a planning. The way this is written up is it's a planning commission decision, and it is final.
Right.
Unless
it doesn't go to city council or anything.
Not automatically,
right. But
you can appeal to city council within 15 days. And I asked the swag contingent if they intended to appeal. They said, well, we got 15 days, let you know. So I can't imagine the way that they have fought this tooth and nail that they would not appeal.
Especially with the vote being that close on planning commission, because, one thing city council or county commission will look at when they get something that's come through planning commission is what was the vote there. And if you're city council member, there's a big difference between something arriving to you with a 15-0 vote on planning commission and something that shows up with a 7-6 that actually started out as a 6-7. On the other hand, I can only imagine there are some city council members who might be thinking, "Oh Lord."
Yeah, well, one thing is now I haven't spoken to her real recently, but there wasn't a whole lot of difference between this iteration of the plan and the previous one. Just some tweaks to it. Karen Adams, who represents South Knoxville on city council, did not support the plan as at that time. There was
a former planning commissioner herself, so she knows this realm really well.
Yeah. Although, as I said, nobody really knew much about this process. This is the first time it was used on anything of any size. It was used once before on a lot with a single house on it, not a big development.
The alternative compliance process you're talking about.
Yes, the alternative compliance. And so that's something that was completely new to all of them. And they kind of had to grope their way through the process. And what ends up happening on that, just real briefly, because I don't want to bore everybody any more than they probably already are. What happens is they submit a plan to the city codes department, and the city codes department looks at it and makes a recommendation, because they obviously are intimately familiar with the South Waterfront form-based code, and they are supposed to make a recommendation to Planning Commission about the decision, and then Planning Commission votes. They didn't really make a recommendation for or against it. They just said, these are the things you need to look at. So that was a kind of a little thing. I think that a Planning Commission had. I think some planning commissioners would have preferred, okay, give us your opinion on this, but they didn't get it. But anyway, the upshot is the apartment complex, which is, like I said, 127 units.
217.
I'm sorry, 217 units. And they're going to be marketing it to people 55 and older, and this is in an area where there are a lot of student apartments already. Although they're going to market it, I'm sure that if somebody who's 20 years old and goes to UT and their parents want to rent them an apartment there, they'll probably rent it to them. But that's not the target of them. So this is that'll add a couple hundred residents there. Actually, probably more like 300 or so residents there in the South Waterfront, in a place where the population is now pretty dense.
Yep,
right
and more cars, and the traffic there has already can be pretty gnarly, especially around rush hour. Getting across the Henley Bridge, especially with the Gay Street
Bridge is closed, and Sevier Avenue is still under construction or reconstruction right now. So, but I'm sure even if it survives an appeal to city council, ain't nobody gonna be building there. Nobody will be living there for a couple of years while they build it. I mean, it'll be
a pretty huge project.
It's a huge project, and it's a challenging project too, because of the underlying rock there on that hill. It's not the easiest place to dig foundations for large buildings. So, but like I said, there will probably be an appeal to city council. So you haven't heard the end of it, but probably heard the most interesting thing that will happen between now and the time it opens, if it opens. The final decision is made, because that was like you said, there was some whiplash at Thursday's meeting, and we'll move now from a development in the city to a development in the county, and that this has kind of highlighted something that flew under everybody's radar, and it's a development that will, or not a development, it's a it's something that highlights a real challenge to future development in Knox County, and that comes in the form of a new state law that nobody around here really knew about. And how we found out about it, how most people in Knox County government found out about it. I say most, not all, but most. Was there is a proposal to build a subdivision in East Knox County called Carter Valley. It is next to a subdivision the same developer did, and it is on Carter Mill Drive, which is one of these narrow roads in the county where people, whenever development proposals come in, that's the one the top road where they go. The area residents go, this road is dangerous. You can't put a development there. Well, this road is very, very skinny. Between the entrance of this proposed subdivision and the existing subdivision to the east, it's about 20 feet wide, which is what it's supposed to be, and everything's fine. From there, though, to the next road, which ends up connecting over toward Carter Elementary School, the road narrows down to as narrow as 13.5 feet. It's two cars can't pass right there. So up until now, what has happened is a developer would come with this proposal, and the county would say, okay, you can do it if you pay for all the road improvements that need to be done. So that'd be widening the road. Some places it's putting a turn lane as well, things like that. And the developer pays 100% of the cost. And which is good because the county doesn't have any money to pay for it.
Right. Because of that, this has become the county's preferred mechanism for piece by piece improving the infrastructure out in the more rural areas of the county on a development by development basis, because as they come forward, they say, okay, well, you need to pay for this stretch of road or this sidewalk or whatever, and then the county doesn't have to pay for it.
Right. And what that does is it does make it easier for the county to plan, because they can take their capital dollars, which they get through borrowing, and they've already borrowed this money. And as we all well know, they can't borrow a whole lot more in the next couple of years. That goes to scheduled road improvements. They're in the 5-year plan, capital improvements plan. In this case, the first year of the 5-year capital improvements plan. The Engineering Public Works Department does have operating funds. That goes toward paving roads that already exist. And they're already, as we've talked about before, they're only paving about half the mileage of roads that they need to pave to keep up and keep the roads up to any kind of standard. So the what they found out was this state law that just recently passed in this year's session and went into effect this summer, doesn't let that happen anymore. You have to share the cost. The county and the developer have to share the cost on a prorated basis. Now, figuring out those proportions is kind of tricky, but basically, whoever benefits more has to pay more. And what this means in a practical sense is, in this case, the road improvements. Jim Snowden, who's the senior engineering director for the county, was telling me he ballparked it at $1 million to do the section of road that needs to be done. And of course, the county does not have $1 million. But the developer would be on the hook for that. Instead, based on traffic counts and the amount of traffic that's already there, which would be the county's responsibility, and the added trips per day, which is how they calculate it, is the added ones would be the developer's thing. And in this case, the new development would add about 3/4 of the traffic, and or about a third or 2/3 of the traffic. But the county would still be on the hook for about $400,000 on this. So the county just the staff recommended denying this just because the county can't pay for it.
Yeah,
the planning staff did, and they were going to do it, and they were. They said, this is going to have a chilling effect, because if this is the case, then there are a lot of developments that we just will have to deny.
Even if the developers themselves may be willing to say, okay, we'll go ahead and pay for it, which they have been doing. Like, developers have been paying for these on a case-by-case basis. But if the law says that the county has to pay, then the county has to pay. Yeah,
and apparently in virtually all circumstances, that is the case. Because the initial application is, okay, I'm going to put in 20 houses in this subdivision. Of course, that's a small subdivision, but the road improvements got negotiated from there. So it's not really they don't usually just come in saying, hey, I'll improve the road. Usually it's the county saying, hey, yeah, we'll say yes if you improve the road. Then they go, oh, okay. Anyway, the one thing that's interesting is this bill was the brainchild of probably not the brainchild, it's probably a developer who put this bug in the ears of two Shelby County lawmakers, Representative Kevin Vaughn and Senator Brent Taylor. They sponsored this legislation. But the interesting thing is this was considered under utilities. Went through the committee process for approving things for utilities, not property development, property rights. And so what it was apparently designed for was when a utility extends coverage to a certain area, they can't charge one developer the entire amount, and then they have to prorate that. But the definition in the law of infrastructure includes roads. And so it applies to roads as well as utilities. Snowden was telling me that he and Jacobs, Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs, found out about this kind of last minute. And they went to ask Vaughn to reconsider, to withdraw the bill, whatever. And this was the day of the vote in the House when it did it. It was just too late. It went under the radar of everybody. Apparently, nobody in the Knox County delegation knew about it, and everyone.
And those lobbyists at the Stones River Group that Knox County government pays lobbying money to keep track of bills that might affect them, maybe missed this one.
Well, yeah, and one of the things is, and when you just look at it without really closely reading it, it would apply to KUB or Lenore City Utility Board, but it wouldn't apply to Knox County. So you could, if
you just read the caption,
even if you read even if you read most of the bill, and it went through the utilities approval process. So, I mean, whoever KUB uses to get them to let them know what's going on probably told them, but for whatever reason, Knox County didn't know about it till it was too late. This could, it already has prevented or at least delayed this one project. In fact, the developer agreed to postpone this for 30 days, and Snowden said they were going to be talking to them about things. But apparently, the way that the county's interpreting this, they can't go to them and say, hey, can you pay all of it? The county is required to pay its proportion of this. And that is an interesting dilemma.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes it, because that, as you were saying about the capital plan, they have a 5-year rolling capital plan, but they fund it 1 year at a time, and they can make changes to it on an annual basis. They always do update it every year, but like it only gets updated once a year. Yeah. And that creates quite you can imagine all sorts of people wanting to do different kinds of development around the county who, if this bill is not changed, which maybe Knox County and some others will push for that, who knows?
There is going to be a push to change it.
Yeah, I would think so. But you could create a years-long bottleneck in that capital plan to get, each individual development on there. So we're going to need $300,000 for this road, for this development, and $250,000 over here. And again, those aren't huge amounts, but in the context of how much money the county actually has to spend on infrastructure, like it's a lot.
Well, what the deal is, of course, mentioned earlier, the capital plan is funded through bonded indebtedness. The county can't do more, and they. You can't raid the operating expenses because that's all going to paving. And if you want to just forego paving, you can do that. But but what would Snowden said would end up happening if they had to do this is if they have to pay a large amount for a project, then that would push back these projects that are ready to go. If there's if the county had to pay $500,000 on a new subdivision development because of this law, then $500,000 worth of road projects would be bumped from the 26-27 fiscal year at least to the next fiscal year. And it's a chain reaction. Things get bumped because they have, they've got projects lined up for 5 years. So,
and it would create this, if you really did it that way, it would create this very patchwork thing.
Oh, yeah.
It would basically make it impossible for either the county or the developers to plan and say, okay, we know this year we're going to do this. There's a lot of complications there. I think the thing that, I guess we will see what happens with that state law in the long run, or if the county finds some kind of workaround on it, although it doesn't sound like there is one. But again, this just highlights the extreme financial straits that Knox County is in and has been in. The whole reason that they have become dependent on developers to do these kind of piecemeal improvements is because they don't have money to plan comprehensively and say, okay, we're going to go out and do these things and have the, as everybody always says they want to see, have the infrastructure done before the development comes. They have no money in the piggy bank to do that. Mm-hmm. And this is just another example highlighting that.
Yeah. At best, the best case scenario up until now has been, we can't make improvements beforehand, but they're going to make it as they go. So by the time these people are actually living in this subdivision, the road's going to be improved. And in the absence of that, they've said, we're just going to deny these. So here's, the all these people who want to move to Knoxville and Knox County, who wouldn't be able to buy a house here because these subdivisions aren't going to be built. What that will do, of course, is drive up costs, housing costs again. They're just now stabilizing. The whole housing crunch is beginning to ease quite a bit, and this just makes it bad again.
Well, and it will be very interesting to see. We have a new county mayor coming into office next month, Betsy Henderson, who ran on not a super specific platform of how she was going to control development, but sort of a general anti-development platform, not wanting to see, continued growth of density, especially in more rural areas. And it's possible that she or some of the people who have supported her might see something like this as more of a feature than a bug. Like, well, this is a sort of, this will control development because we're not going to be able to approve it because we can't pay for it. Now, the one caveat to that is that after running on that kind of platform in the Republican primary, Henderson turned around and received a whole lot of donations from developers ahead of the general election. So what her actual position toward development is really going to be remains to be seen. But if the county wants, she's going to have a loud voice in whether the county really wants to make a push to change this law or not.
That's true. And it throws all kinds of questions out there. For instance, at Thursday's Planning Commission meeting, one of the things the Planning Commission did was they voted on an expansion of the Vulcan Materials Dixie Lee quarry out just north of the Watt Road exit, deep west Knox County, and the expansion would necessitate that they close a road and reroute a road. There's a road that goes right, but this was their property extends beyond, on both sides of the road. They've only been using one side, and without going into too much more detail, they want to use the other side. That would require the rerouting of the road around the existing quarry instead of through the two parts of it. And Snowden told me that they were going to pay for it. I asked him, I said, is this going to be covered under that state law? And he said he didn't think so. Of course, everybody has to say, I don't think so, because nobody really knows for sure. But he said because that was their original proposal, was they would pay for the relocation of the road.
Right, because there's an existing road there. It's not like they're building a new road or something. They're wanting to move an existing road.
Well, and it's not like there was, they said from the get-go, I mean, it wasn't that we're going to be doing this, and the county said, well, if you do that, you got to move the road. They came in and said, we want to move the road so we can do this.
Right.
So,
well, and they probably want that to not have the road running through the middle of their quarry.
Absolutely. There's heavy equipment, there's blasting, there's all kinds of stuff. So they want the road there. That particular item at the Planning Commission agenda was very interesting, because there's a subdivision next to the new land for the where the quarry expansion is going to go. Residents there were really opposed to the expansion. The subdivision was developed a couple of years ago. The quarry's been there for 40 years. And
they've owned that property for a long time.
They've owned that property for not the entire time, but at least 20-something years. And one of the Nancy Barger, one of the planning commissioners, kind of said, I used to be a pilot in Atlanta. The people would move next to the airport and they complain about the noise of the airplanes. So it's kind of like that, and
the quarry was
there. And when you moved in, and my understanding is, of course, granted, they were all told this in a document given during closing whenever they bought the houses. Now, anybody who's bought a house knows that it's impossible to look at all the documents that are in there, but ostensibly they were notified. And any real estate agent worth their salt would have known that there's a quarry over there. There's blasting a couple of days a week or a couple of days a month at least. It's pretty well common knowledge that quarry was there. But anyway, that was just kind of an interesting aside. But anyway, this change in state law has already had an effect in subdivision approvals. No other proposal in this month's meeting on Thursday dealt with that. This was the one in East Knox County was the only one, but we will see what happens. These come up every month, so we'll see what happens moving forward there, and see if Knox County does indeed make a push to get them to amend this law. So next, this doesn't have to do, well, it does have to do with infrastructure in a way. Knoxville Municipal Golf Course, which is in northwest Knoxville. Actually, what it is it's because of its finger annexation. It's kind of a balloon that rises out of northwest Knoxville. It's surrounded by property that's in the county, connected to the city of Knoxville only by annexation along Western Avenue and Shawd Road. It's on Shawd Road near the Western Avenue interchange. But Knoxville Municipal is a publicly owned golf course the city owns. They have a contractor who operates it. An 18-hole golf course, and it's one of the worst in the area. The city commissioned a study a couple of years ago on their golf courses. There's that one in Whittle Springs and Williams Creek, which is kind of a separate thing. It's par 3 for basically to introduce golf to inner city kids, and that foundation runs it. It's not really. The other two are the ones that are the 18-hole courses for adults. Survey of area golfers and they asked them to rank 11 courses in the public courses in the area, and Knoxville Municipal was number 10 and Whittle Springs was number 11. Mm-hmm. So when you read about things that golfers post on the equivalent of Yelp, they talk about the shape of the greens. There's all kinds of they're way behind in capital improvements too.
They haven't been a top priority, let's say.
They have not. So, in fact, that study, the top recommendation would be to sell. But another one, and this is reflected in the city's Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which was just recently adopted, would be to turn it into a multi-sport complex. And one of the things, and they coupled this with a study from Visit Knoxville, is there's a shortage of what they now call rectangular fields, and which is basically a football field or soccer field that you could play either football, soccer, lacrosse, those kinds of things. But there's a dearth of rectangular fields, and the Visit Knoxville thing said, well, if we had a sports park a public sports park where you had these fields, you could get out of town tournaments or out of the regional tournaments or even beyond tournaments to come and play sports there, and would be kind of a tourism draw, so you could use tourism money to pay for it. But of course, the golf course, it's set back from the road, So there's a lot of road frontage on Shawd Road, which they want to use too. But then, the rest of the property is all filled up with the golf course. And the concept is to do away with the 18-hole course at the rear of the property, have either a short par 3 course or a 9-hole course. Then in the midsection of the property, which is up to where the clubhouse is today, have that be the area for the ball fields. And then the area between where the clubhouse is now and Shawd Road would be made available for private commercial development, which would also theoretically help pay for this. What the city and the county have done is they've decided to work through the Sports Authority, which, remember, they did basically the same thing for Covenant Health Park. Work with the Sports Authority and Visit Knoxville to issue a request for proposals. Nothing's a done deal. The request for proposals is just to find out what the interest would be, what the private sector thinks would actually go in. And they're kind of envisioning, public-private partnerships to run this and to develop it.
And we can link this back to the last story, because that little section of Shawd Road is pretty skinny right there. And if a development of this mass were to go in, they'd probably need to widen that road.
They might need to widen, yeah. But you got to remember this, though. This is a city and county project, so the city and county would probably be on the hook for all of it. But I mean, one of the things that the Sports Authority can do is it can issue revenue bonds, so that revenues from the operations of the course, operations of the playing fields, the sales revenue and property tax revenue from this private development could go to help pay off the bonded indebtedness, and that could help pay for the roads too. So, I mean, there are all kinds of options there, but it would be a complete, change in how Knoxville Municipal is managed and operated. It would bring in lots of, these. I mentioned that the fields will be able to be used to attract tournaments. Also, of course, it would be used for games and practices and all for local sports teams. So they're kind of banking on a lot of use going there, and this is so. This is really, it's difficult to get them to talk about it, because they're saying, well, we don't know what's going to go in there. This is broad base. I mean, if you're a golfer and you say, well, okay, they really need to improve that. So what am I going to be able to play on? They don't even know yet. Mm-hmm. So they don't know what to tell you.
Except that it wouldn't be an 18-hole.
It would not be an 18-hole regular golf course. It might be. I think they might be able to get an 18-hole par 3 in. They might just get a par 9 in. But it wouldn't be 18 holes. You have to play twice if you want 18 holes. It's a 9-hole course. So, but it's county, the city and county officials are kind of excited about it. City council is going to be taking it up on Tuesday. County commission will take it up at their monthly meeting, which is on the last day of office for several of the commissioners. So
and for Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
This is this is another of these things that is that they're going to be doing right before leaving office. And Jacobs has said, I'm the mayor till I leave office, till midnight on the 31st or whatever. And sure enough, he'll be doing it. So but anyway, we'll see how that goes. And like I said, these votes won't commit the city or the county to doing anything. It's just getting the sports authority to issue a request for proposals, find out what the private sector thinks is viable, and then move on from there. So, before we head out, we are going to take one last look at August election. The very interesting and transformative election, actually. One of the Democrats, we did an analysis of the returns, and Democrats made some significant gains. They got they flipped a seat in the school board and got a majority on the school board. For the first time, they flipped a seat on county commission. But when you look at the numbers, you really dig into those numbers. One of the things that stands out is the margin of victory that Republicans had in the seats that they won. Now, the Republicans have basically had their way in Knox County, especially in the county-wide races, and they did again. They won them all. But the margins are getting much thinner. Betsy Henderson's margin is only about half that of what Glenn Jacobs was just 4 years ago. And that margin was much less. He was in the 60s the first time he ran. And I did not realize this till I started looking at it, that no Republican, in the teens, it was routine for Republicans to get more than 60% of the vote in county-wide races. It was also routine for Democrats not to even bother putting a candidate up against someone. Since 2000, 2000 was the last year that a county-wide Republican.
You mean 2020?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
2000.
2020, yes. 2020, thank you. 2020 was the last time that a Republican candidate in a county-wide race got 60% or more of the vote. And it just has not, it didn't happen in 2022, 2024, or this year. So obviously the Democrats are making gains, and not only, and this is shrinking. In fact, that one was it seat 11 at large was the Republican candidate barely
seat 10. Justin Cofer, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
He got 50 point something.
Yeah,
percent.
he barely got half the vote. So those margins are really coming down. And one of the things that was interesting, you kind of, you look at the number of people in the primary. If you vote, you know this. If you don't vote, then you should, first of all. But second, you go and you ask for, because we've got the federal and state primaries at the same time, you go and they'll ask you if you want a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot or just a county only ballot, which means you can only vote in the local election. You can't vote in those primaries. The vast majority, of course, pick either a Republican or Democratic ballot. The final numbers weren't in as far as who picked who, the number of Republican ballots that were out and the number of Democratic ballots. Halfway through early voting, it was 60-40, or all through early voting, it was a 60-40 split. Republican, there were 60% took out Republican primary ballots, 40% Democratic primary ballots. And what was interesting was that in the governor's race, and the primaries for governor, on the Republican side, they're very competitive. Marsha Blackburn won big, but it got a lot of attention.
Well, she won big with 43% of the vote.
Well, yeah. There was a three-way race. So, but you know, the number of people who voted in the Republican primary total was a little over 52,000. But then you go to the Knox County mayor's race, same party, same people who are voting, who are already in the voting booth. Betsy Henderson only received 46,000 votes. Basically, 6,000 votes more or less than the Republican gubernatorial candidate. Now, a lot of people are just voting in the primary and not voting in the local election. We get that, but 6,000 fewer voted for Henderson. Now, and you could say, well, yeah, they just didn't vote in the county primary or in the county general election. No, they voted for Democrat Bo Hawk, or a lot of them did, because Hawk's total was 41,800 and change, almost 9,000 votes more than the number of people who voted for the Democratic gubernatorial primary.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a huge jump on the Democratic side. And, this can be interpreted all kinds of ways. Well, you can say, well, there were a bunch of Democrats who got Republican ballots
because they wanted to vote against Marsha Blackburn. And I mean, that definitely happened.
Yeah.
Not that the other choices for Democrats were very good either, but
yeah.
But the thing about that is those are still Democratic voters.
Yeah.
Everybody who voted for Bo Hawk was a Democratic voter.
At least in that race on that day. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just and the Republicans have basically admitted there's, we got to make some changes. We got to do some things because they do feel that this is slipping. Now, like I said, they still have the county, all the countywide offices, but and there's still quite a few who were unopposed. Brent Gibson, sheriff, is the poster child for that. But this has been a phenomenon that's been going on the last several election cycles. So it's not I wouldn't characterize it as a blue wave, but the overall tide is
the water level is rising.
Is rising, and it's rising on the blue side. So
and it's interesting because it's happening at the same time that the local Republican Party, and this is happening many places around the country, we're far enough into the MAGA era now, the Trump era that started in 2016, essentially, and like our local Republican Party has been increasingly taken over by this kind of harder right, Trump MAGA coded faction of the party. That's who basically most of the Knox County party officers are. That's who got elected in their most recent reorganization. And we had the situation we talked about last week where two, sort of more establishment Republican incumbents were beaten by farther right candidates in the primary and then lost in the August 6th election. And so I feel like there's these two trends going on that are starting to intersect where the county overall looks, at least if you look at the last 6-8 years, it looks like it's becoming more competitive at the countywide level between the parties. But meanwhile, the dominant party is also moving farther to the right, which is not what, sort of conventional political wisdom would tell you. If your races are becoming more competitive, then you need to not be nominating candidates who are farther to the right. But I had an email exchange this past week with Eric Weider, who's the conservative consultant who worked with many of those farther right candidates, including the two who lost in the general. And he totally waved this off. Because I basically said, like, is this a good strategy to be running farther and farther right candidates, especially in districts, but also countywide, where you're seeing more openness, let's say, to Democratic candidates than we've tended to see. And he just basically said, doesn't have anything to do with it. Like, look, statewide, Republicans underperformed where they did 4 years ago. We're seeing the same thing nationally. And he's right about that. Like, obviously, and we will see again in November, but the trends for the past year or so have been more favorable for Democrats than Republicans at the national level, and we've seen it several places in Tennessee as well. So, maybe Wyatter is right that, like, it wouldn't have mattered if Gina Oster was running in the 3rd district, that the conditions just favored the Democrats anyway. But it is still an interesting phenomenon to have this sort of narrowing at the countywide level between the two parties at the same time that one of those parties is going farther to the right and also even looking to enforce a sort of ideological conformity in the party, which I know was something that they talked about a little bit last week. Right?
Yeah, we mentioned this on our last week's podcast. On Friday, the Republican executive committee, essentially, they summoned Commissioner Terry Hill and Commissioner Kim Frazier to come to a meeting. To talk about possible infractions that they committed. Everything centered around a photo that they had taken together with Democrat Bo Hawk at a Hardin Valley organization that they were both founders of. And Hawk, they invited the two candidates to talk to the group. Hawk showed up. Henderson didn't. They took a picture with Hawk. A lot of people interpreted that, especially Republicans interpreted that as an endorsement of Hawk. Granted, Hill has clashed with Henderson publicly, especially for her support for school vouchers. Frazier, of course, ran against Henderson in the primary, and is generally considered a more moderate candidate than Henderson. And Henderson, really played up that she was the most conservative and was never going to raise taxes and that sort of thing. So they were summoned to the executive committee meeting they were contacted Thursday night during the election. Essentially, they were contacted and told to show up, or asked to.
Which you can imagine may have been a little bit of a fit of pique on Thursday night as Republicans weren't happy with some of the numbers they were seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I was with the Republicans at the Crown Plaza at their watch party, and it was pretty tense when they were looking at Henderson's totals, the Henderson Hawk totals. I mean, she was ahead, but it wasn't comfortable, and won, but it wasn't comfortable. But anyway, and it was funny. I didn't. I tried to find out what happened with this meeting. Eventually, I wasn't able. Well, I was able to talk with Hill pretty extensively, and she just said, "Hey, I was out of town."
So she didn't go to the meeting.
She didn't go. Neither one of them showed up. Yeah. And it turns out that Martin Daniel, the party chair, said, "Well, I'm not going to talk about what we did because that's private." But there was not a resolution, and there was no vote taken or anything else like that. So apparently, they didn't try to take action. They were, I guess they would censure them or something like that.
Which would be almost beside the point because Hill is term limited and Frazier's leaving office at the end of August. So
and the best thing that could happen would be to alienate Hill further from the party and have her caucus with the Democrats. So that would give them one vote away. Democrats one vote away from the majority. So, but the and she, as you might imagine, thought it was absolutely silly. He said, I've got a 50-year record of voting Republican, being active in the Republican Party, and
her whole family.
Yeah. So it's kind of ridiculous to say that, to think that and she said, I said, well, Terry, I said, I didn't hear, I didn't see anything about you endorsing Hawk. I said, but I got to ask, did you ever endorse him? And she said, no. That's absolutely not. Of course not. That would, she was.
Although she also did not formally endorse Henderson.
Did not endorse Henderson either.
And I think one of the things that's been going on social media on the particular was that that Kim and Hill did not immediately say this is not an endorsement after the fact when the picture came out.
They didn't say, oh no, of course we support Betsy Henderson, the Republican candidate. Neither one of them did that.
Yeah, they were pretty quiet about it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think just to add on to just a second ago what you said, Jesse, that I found interesting because I've happened myself onto a bunch of surveys and I get a bunch of stuff like that, text or email surveys from different campaigns and stuff like that. One of the questions that I keep getting on a number of these surveys from either Republican candidates or Republican think tank style things is if you were to prioritize the actions of your Republican legislators or whatever, and then give you a list of things to check the boxes on. And one of them consistently throughout has always been, is it more important that they are battling the left than passing, and it goes through all these different things that we want these leaders to be doing, voting on X, Y, or Z. Is it more important that they vote against things that the Democrats are doing than, assumedly they don't say it in the survey, but assuming, is it more important that they say no to something the Democrat did than say yes to something that's good that happened to be introduced by a Democrat? And we've seen that with Gloria Johnson in the State House a number of times where she's had at least one that I know of where she introduced it, gets murdered
and then a Republican
immediately, and then a Republican picks it up and runs it, and then it passes cleanly. And so I think that's one of those things it's the identity crisis that the Republicans are having right now in the Trump era / new Republicanism, whatever that means to Republicans, is that fighting Democrats has become an important part of the job instead of passing good laws.
Yeah, and not just fighting Democrats, but fighting the cultural left.
Right.
Fighting anybody who is sort of like defined as an enemy, which obviously includes immigrants, includes LGBTQ people, includes, librarians. And one thing actually I wanted to mention, we don't have on our list here, but I think it is worth mentioning. County Commissioner Andy Fox, who is one of the hard right culture warriors on our county commission, had an item on this month's agenda for the August 31st meeting, which he then withdrew this week. He would both we at Compass and the News Sentinel wrote about this on Tuesday, and by midday Tuesday, Fox had withdrawn it from the agenda, so it won't be up for discussion or vote. But he had introduced an ordinance that would have made it illegal to broadcast an Islamic call to prayer anywhere in Knox County. And, people are maybe not familiar with what that's like, but if you've ever been in a city where they have a lot of mosques, like I've been in Istanbul, Muslims pray 5 times a day. They have designated prayer times, and mosques will put out, they have loudspeakers in a lot of areas, and there is a call to prayer. There's it's a ritualistic thing. There's somebody who is designated to do this, and you will hear this echoing out. I actually think it's quite a distinct and kind of lovely thing to hear. It's not exactly musical, but sort of. There's only really one large mosque in Knox County. There's some other smaller prayer centers.
And large is relative.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, there's estimates ranging from 3,000 to 5,000 Muslims total in Knox County, which would be under 1% of the total population. So you're talking about a very tiny population.
But the mosque itself is small too.
Yeah, and the mosque is not big. Now, where I think people have maybe heard this is that mosque, the Muslim Center of Knoxville, during Ramadan will have big public breakings of fast in World's Fair Park, and they have sometimes used loudspeakers there to do it. And so, people who live around the park or happen to be around the park can maybe hear it. But so Fox introduced this ordinance that would make it illegal to amplify a call to prayer anywhere in Knox County, an Islamic call to prayer anywhere in Knox County. It was very specific. Like this was aimed at Muslims. And it was full of his ordinance had sort of a preamble to it that was full of this kind of extremely cherry-picked history of the United States, and it basically making a case that the United States is and always has been, was always intended to be an explicitly Christian nation. That sort of like, even though our Constitution literally says nothing about religion except in the First Amendment, it says that the government cannot sanction or enforce, a particular state religion. But he had this whole argument that no, that was a mistake, and have always been a Christian nation, and that's how we should be governed. Which flies in the face of a couple hundred years of constitutional, scholarship and Supreme Court decisions. But like it just seemed obviously unconstitutional, just like as blatant an attempt to essentially establish a state religion as you could get in Knox County, or at least establish that this one religion isn't allowed. It would be the equivalent of saying that Christian churches couldn't ring their bells, which of course is a similar thing where they ring their bells to they signal the time, but also to let people know that services are starting. And so he did withdraw it, but it's just another sign of, sort of that push and pull tension where there is a faction of, conservatives in the United States right now who are very focused on just kind of this relentless, sort of combative approach to everything about our civic and public lives. And, it's a big part of the MAGA movement. And I guess it'll just be really interesting to see after what happens in November, maybe after the next presidential election, we will see. But where that particular faction sits, because it doesn't feel like, Fox didn't even, as soon as there was publicity to this, he pulled it back, which kind of makes you wonder, what was the point of even putting it on the agenda in the first place? Yeah,
well, his colleagues have asked him that about several things that he's put on there, but one of the things, and this kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier with the Democrats doing better. Fox represents the 9th district in South Knox County, which was the seat the Democrats flipped in the school board. Now he won by a pretty narrow margin 2 years ago when he ran for county commission. 4 years ago, Christy was the won by a pretty decent margin as she was an incumbent. She ran as a Republican in the school board, and she won. And then this time around, she was beaten in the primary by a more culturally conservative candidate, not as combative necessarily as Fox, but that end of the party.
Right, to Christie's right, because Christie's quite a moderate.
Yeah, to Christie's right. Very, very much, pro school choice with the vouchers and the things, worried about library materials, those kind of cultural touchstone issues for Republicans. And one thing was the Democrat in that race, Brandon Jenkins, not only won, but was interesting. Democrats, compared to when Christie ran, turnout for the Democrats was much higher all across the district. Now, this is a district, the city precincts since it's a mix of city and county precincts, the city precincts, South Knoxville area, South Waterfront and area, those Democrats really turned out a lot more in those precincts, but also in the redder county districts or precincts as well. So Fox, is one of these right-wing people who, and I don't know what South Knox Republicans think about these types of things that he keeps bringing up, and that's this is not the first time he's attacked Islam.
Nope.
I don't know if Republicans think that's a waste of time or they're cheering him on. I don't know, but given the swing, slow swing, not a complete swing, but the movement in the electorate in South Knox County toward Democrats, if Democrats run a strong candidate against him, those results could be really interesting 2 years from now.
Yep.
I mean, I think just to editorialize for just a second, I think Gita probably could have won that seat. Like, we can't prove the negative.
Third district.
I think we go to the third district. I think if Gina got through the primary, I think she could have kept that seat. And I think it's the same thing for Christy down there. I think Christy would have been a winnable. It would have been a much more winnable seat for them with that candidate versus the primary winner candidate. And I think Kim or Larson would have beat Bohawk by a bigger percentage as well.
Well, and that was sort of what I had proposed in my questions to Eric Wyatt, or was like, did you kind of shoot the Republican Party in the foot by nominating these two farther right candidates in these districts? And his argument was like, no, that the overall election was just sort of in Democrats' favor. And he said something.
Well, isn't that a problem for Republicans?
Right. Well, and what one thing he said, he referenced some other races, and he kind of suggested that maybe you could look at this and say that might make a couple percent difference at most, but a couple percent difference in close races is like can be the actual margin of victory.
Yes.
So even if you're going to say that, well, no, it might have only hurt us by a couple of points, it's like, well, in swing districts, a couple of points actually often ends up mattering.
Well, and when the margins were in the 60%, when the Republicans were getting 64% of the vote in countywide races, what's a percentage point or two,
right?
But then it went from 64 to 62 to 60 to 55 to 52. I mean, it's when you look at it over time, it would be something that would concern me if I were a Republican, and and cheer me up if I were a Democrat. So that's I don't think that that it will have a huge impact on the state legislative races, the way that the districts are laid out, and the incumbency. That I don't think it, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see what we have some Republican legislators who have won by considerable margins, and we'll see what their margins are in November.
Well, the one other thing to think about there is that our state legislature is definitely going to be rethinking the legislative districts probably before the next census, possibly this coming year, because after the Calais decision from the Supreme Court earlier this year, they apparently no longer have to care or think about minority representation. We do have an essentially, I don't think it's actually even quite a majority minority district, but the 15th legislative district that Sam McKenzie represents is drawn to, consolidate African American votes as much as possible. But if you get people in the legislature looking at the maps and looking at the results in a place like Knox County, they might get a little bit careful about how they're going to chop up districts, because if the overall environment is more competitive for Democrats, you might want to be careful about how you shift those lines.
Oh, yeah. And And we have there in the House, our House delegation. There are two Democrats, and I haven't looked real closely to see if there is a way to gerrymander those districts to make only one of them a strong Democratic district, to minimize the chances of a Democrat winning the other one. I don't know. I haven't looked very closely.
Well, in the last one,
but I'm sure there is.
In the last one that they just did a couple of years ago, they redrew Gloria's district.
Yeah.
And that was more to keep my 18 solidly red than it was to try to unseat Gloria. But they've already done a shift trying to minimize it to just 2. So the idea that they could squeeze that into 1 seems very unlikely.
I mean, at a certain point, you just you have to deal with the people who actually live there. And so if you're in an environment where Democrats are winning, let's say 45% of the vote countywide pretty reliably, like Republicans have 5 out of 7 seats. That's 70 plus percent of, they've already gerrymandered them. Like Republicans are already significantly overrepresented in our legislative delegation. And I don't know, can you really get that to a 6-1 margin in a county that's voting 45% Democrat? That seems tricky.
Well, and the way that the allegiances are distributed, the city is bluer than ever.
Yep.
And the county is redder than ever. And that's, in the city, Betsy Henderson, in this past election, Betsy Henderson won 2 precincts that are 100% inside the city. Some are split, and Bohawk did better in most of those than she did. But there are only 2. Now, one of them is a heavy voting district, which is Dean Hill. The other one's a very small, almost insignificant district or precinct in North Knoxville. And likewise, Bohawk, I think only won one county-only district, or precinct. He won only one county precinct that's usually Republican. So, it would be tough to be able to in the city of Knoxville's dead set in the middle of the county, so it would be kind of hard to carve up the county without having a couple of Democratic majority districts, but
I'm sure they'll give it a look.
It will be looked at very closely. Well, that's all we have time for. That happened last week. More happened, but we don't have time to get to it. If you want to know things like that, the things that we don't get a chance to talk to here, you can always subscribe to us at CompassKnox.com. You will get in addition to access to our website, where you get some in-depth reporting, you also get a daily newsletter with 5 or 6 good tidbits of news every day in your inbox. So, or every weekday in your inbox. Now, for next week, we have a couple of meetings that we know we'll be covering. One is County Commission is holding a workshop at 5 p.m. in the main assembly room of the City County building. A workshop called by our Andy Fox, as a matter of fact. He is wanted to have a work session on an apartment development that's been proposed for Governor John Sevier Highway in South Knox County. There is a proposal to give the Dominion Group is proposing to build it. They are going to have half of the apartments go to or priced for renting to people in workforce housing. That's up to 80% of the the median family income, and it's generally it's the people in that income range: police officers, firefighters, teachers. These is not necessarily low income housing. Fox really, they brought it up at the last county commission meeting. It's going to be coming back up again on the 31st.
And they're seeking a pilot tax incentive. Right?
Yeah. The Dominion Group is seeking a payment in lieu of tax agreement. It is less generous to the developer than a lot of pilots are. It would reduce the amount that they would pay during the pilot period to 50% of the value of the property. Typically on pilots, they're frozen at the undeveloped rate of or the undeveloped amount that they would get from property tax. So it's actually more generous to the county than most pilots are. But Fox is not a big fan of pilots. He's certainly not a big fan of subsidized in any form subsidized development. He and Angela Russell were incredulous that the plans called for granite countertops in the apartments.
What do they have against granite countertops?
That those are too good for people getting subsidized.
Do they realize that granite countertops are just sort of like standard equipment in most developments these days?
Well, it was pointed out that it's pretty standard. In fact, you almost can't build them, without granite countertops anywhere. I mean, at any price point. And the other thing, and this is one thing that I always have to explain to people that the difference between in money between an apartment building for workforce housing or low income housing even and luxury apartments, the difference is very minimal as far as the amount it costs to build.
Right. Because
the only difference is in the finishings, the sinks and the doorknobs, and sometimes the interior doors, instead of
and also like sometimes the size of the apartment.
The size of the apartment, because the main costs, the main things that cost money to build, is the land, the building materials, and the labor are just the same, no matter what. Now, there's no discount for labor on lower income apartment buildings. The only difference is the amount that you can charge in rent, and so the subsidy helps the developer cover those costs for lower income housing and workforce housing. But anyway, that will all get hashed out. But Fox is a very big skeptic of.
Well, and it's also worth noting that Fox definitely doesn't like pilots. He doesn't like subsidized housing. He also just doesn't like multifamily housing. Period. He ran for office promising to stop dense development in South Knox County, and his reason for this is that, according to his math, and he's probably right, the more dense the population gets in any given area, the more likely they are to vote for liberals and Democrats. And that is just the prism that Andy Fox applies to literally everything that he ever votes on. Yeah.
And now one thing that he does bring up that it's probably worth a conversation on is, the pilots and these types of incentives typically have gone to redevelopment of properties that are already developed. They're dilapidated, or they're historic properties that cost a lot to renovate.
Which is why they happen way more often in the city than outside the city.
Right, and these are incentives that are 99% responsible for downtown's resurgence in this century. And this is not. This is a greenfield. There's nothing there, and saying, he's going, why should we incentivize development of land that's going to be developed anyway? Assuming that someone is going to develop it, and that's a pretty good assumption on John Sevier Highway. So, and
he probably can't stop it from being apartments because it's right next to an existing apartment.
Yeah, he can't stop it. But what this would do, he can stop this project because Dominion Group has basically said, if we're not going to build workforce housing, which, the Jacobs administration is already, we need more workforce housing. This fills a need in the community. But Dominion Group has said, if we can't build workforce housing here, we're walking away. Which means there's, which probably be fine with Fox, that nobody develops it, but eventually somebody will, and it would be, more, just about have to be more market rate than this proposal, because, as pilots go, this is a pretty sweet one for the county. So, anyway. That's going to happen Monday, and we'll see what they actually talk about instead of just what we assume they're going to talk about. Then on Tuesday, council's meeting. Again, there's not a whole lot on the agenda other than the golf course proposal. That's going to be on the agenda, and we'll be there to cover both of these things when they occur next week. And there will be plenty of other news that happens. That's the nature of news. We'll be on top of as much of it as we can. But that's it for this week. Jesse, pleasure as always.
Happy to be here.
Good. Thanks to Lord Seth Barber for his excellent work and his occasional interjection of wisdom to our conversation. Also, thanks to Will Wright for providing music for us. That's it for Compass Points this week. We will be here next week with another installment. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next week.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.